Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm excited to welcome Eric Sze, chef of 886 in Wenwen, for a brief conversation. Then we're going to turn it over to you for any questions. And the only thing that's between us and the food, well, you and the food, is us. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. You are really carrying the torch for next generation of Taiwanese American chefs here in the U.S. And first off, I just wanted to say, how has your experience of Taiwanese food resonate with what you just saw?
Oh man, I think it's been a very eventful, because I came to the States when I was 18 years old, and I'm now 32. And so it's been a good decade, and it's been a whirlwind, sort of seeing Taiwanese cuisine never represented to now, we're literally here watching an entire series on Taiwanese food. And it's not just the surface level, right? Like for the longest time, I've had a tiny gripe with all the Taiwanese produced stuff where it's all about the night market and it's very surface level. But I have always understood that you have to introduce the basics first before going into the more, nitty gritty things and the history and the more nerdy stuff, for lack of a better term. And you did it, right? I was sitting there in disbelief talking about how, black bean soy sauce comes from Fujian, and a little tidbit is also the Japanese came and they built yellow soybean factories for yellow bean soy sauce. And so now Taiwan produces both and also blends it, one of the only places that blends it. And also the rice, and also, the fruit canning, the fruit industry, and also, the native tribes. We never get to talk about that. And so I think I resonated with it tremendously, because it's a level of representation that I don't think we get a lot. And there are layers to Taiwanese food and Taiwanese history and cuisine, and just sort of seeing that it's very monumental, I would say.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think that that's what's amazing about the fact that there is this whole series about Taiwan on PBS, because we've always lacked for representation. People have always wanted to know, what is Taiwan about? What is Taiwanese food about? And you're actually coming out with a cookbook called Taiwanese, question mark. So I have to ask you, what is Taiwanese?
Thanks for giving me this opportunity to market this book that is gonna come out next year, I think October, if I don't procrastinate. The title Taiwanese question mark came about because every single week, and when we were opening 886, which is the first restaurant we opened 7 years ago, when we were doing the press right before opening 886, every single media outlet would ask me, what is Taiwanese food? And then I would just sit there and kind of pull stuff out of my behind, because I didn't know. And then there was never like a one-liner that is very succinct that could really capture any of it. And then as time went on, I had the rude realization that I didn't know what I was doing. And then the Google reviews started reflecting what I didn't know what I was doing. And people were kind of not criticizing, but almost like just reflecting that, oh, this is not Taiwanese food, this is not authentic. And then as I learned more about it, the more I realized, nobody really knows, right? Our culture has been around for 150 years, if that, and the real sort of representation of Taiwanese culture that we know of today it's been sort of like this amalgamation of super accelerated, sort of like a cultural clash course of the native, the Japanese, the Han Chinese, and just within the Han Chinese, there are like these 8 different diasporas, and it's just like jamming together, almost like in an atomic chamber. So how do you answer that? And the problem with that is everybody's definition of Taiwanese food is different. So when this dumb guy opens up a Taiwanese restaurant trying to resonate with all the Taiwanese people in New York, I fail spectacularly. But then there was a moment, I think, last year where I was probably drunk. That's when the best ideas come. I was like, what if I just, instead of being trapped in my own mind and sort of leaned into the idea that really nobody knows, right? Like, I could sit down with anybody to discuss Taiwanese food, and we could essentially have a debate, right? What other cuisine could you have a debate on? And so I think that is something beautiful about it, and why not embrace that? Embrace my co-writer, marketing again, Elise. She was listening to me talk, and she was like, okay, let's just embrace the gray area. And I think there's no better way to do that, to talk about Taiwanese food, than to embrace the gray area.
I think that's a really good point. When people ask me about Taiwan, I always say it's ever evolving because, as you just mentioned, there's been so much foreign influence, colonization, and the great thing about the Taiwanese is that they are used to this change. They've embraced that change, and I think they've become more resilient as a result. So you can see that in their food. They're playing with what's local, what's fresh, history, nostalgia from where they came from, that plays into it. But it doesn't have to be like didactic or be, about a certain identity, right? It's about a flavor profile. And I think the people are just generally so happy and easygoing that they just want to eat good food. And good food is a priority for the Taiwanese, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, like if you open up Google Maps in Taipei, or Taiwan in general, the average rating of restaurants is way lower than all of America that I've seen. People are so critical, in a positive note. People are very constructive, but they know exactly what they want. And actually, I was, when there were some long, gorgeous shots of the buildings in Taipei and Tainan, I had a thought, because when I was growing up in Taipei, I had always thought the buildings were hideous, right? They are, like, especially when we were traveling to Europe, to Japan, to like even mainland China, right? The architecture just seemed like it was like thrown together by 20 different departments. But then now when I go back, I find a little bit of beauty in it because there's so much scrappiness in individual buildings, right? And no single building looks the same. They're kind of like equally ugly, and that makes them collectively gorgeous. And I was thinking, don't you think it's kind of odd that the Taiwanese people, being of like East Asian cultural descent, were known to be very more of like a collective culture. But there's so much individualism in Taiwanese culture. People love expressing themselves. People would, find creative solutions to whether or not, like hang their air conditioning unit on the outside of their window, obviously trying to be safe, but also like hang their clothes, and they don't really care if their underwear is hanging outside. And there's like something, again, embracing that. It's really fun.
It is, and I always thought Taipei was the ugliest city when I would visit as a child, and that's because much of it wasn't planned. The architecture is kind of haphazard, as, say, for instance, when my parents left China with the Kuomintang in the 40s, they didn't think that they were going to make a home in Taiwan, but they ended up doing that. And so, buildings were kind of constructed over freeways and parking lots, and it's just a eyesore. But the people there are just really easygoing, right? And happy for the most part, and as I said, resilient.
Yeah, and it very much reflects in the food. Every time, I hate for this to be like a venting session for me opening restaurants and getting a lot of criticism from my fellow Taiwanese people, but every time I go back to Taiwan, the cuisine is a little bit different, right? The whole reason why I opened up a Taiwanese restaurant in the first place was because I realized I didn't know anything about Taiwanese food. And I felt shame that I spent 18 years in Taiwan only really eating, the food of a very particular Han Chinese that I descend from. And I didn't take the time and the opportunity to explore, to educate myself on the cuisine. And so 886 was sort of like a passion project where I can keep playing with different things and research and educate. I forgot where I was going with this, but yeah, every time I go back to Taiwan, the cuisine changes ever so slightly. There's always a trend, much like New York. There's always a trend, whether people prefer a more, caramelized luo fan this decade compared to the last decade, where it's a little bit lighter, a little softer, where people prefer flakier scallion pancakes or a little doughier scallion pancakes. It's always minutely different, but so fascinating in that the details that sort of like evolve with time.
Yeah, and as it is with a lot of Asian street food, there's one person or one family that makes something so good, like a scallion pancake, that they just are known for generations, right?
Yeah.
And it's much harder to serve a full menu representing the Taiwanese diaspora, Eric. So I think you've done a great job there.
Thank you. We try. It's sometimes I feel like it's a thankless task, but then I get reminded with good people. With every bad review, there's another great review, and then I get to hang out with cool folks like you. And
Everybody at these screenings always asks, the first question is always, what's your favorite Taiwanese restaurant? So don't ask that question, because you know where it is. It's 886 and Wenwen in Brooklyn. So, and we're gonna have a taste of, do you wanna talk a little bit about what we're about to eat?
oh yeah, sure. Well, it's a blend. We have a scallion pancake beef wrap, which I really love. We make our scallion pancakes by hand. We incorporate a little bit of sourdough because it's essentially the same idea as lao mian, right? It's the same exact technique. And we wrap it with beef shanks that we braise for hours and hours and hours. And we also have a relatively more traditional pork belly bun, pork belly that we braise, again, with an old, like a mother sauce that we just keep recycling. It gets more and more flavorful each time we braise it. And we have a popcorn chicken that we sort of hijacked from the Koreans by adding a sacha chili oil honey on. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. I think it's pretty good, but don't tell me if you don't like it.
That sounds so good. Does anybody have any questions, feedback? I think there's a mic going around.
Just a quick question. Where can we get a good quality black bean soy sauce for those who haven't tried it?
Oh, good question. Is Lisa here? Lisa runs Yunhai, which is a distributor of artisanal Taiwanese products, including the Yudingxing soy sauce and the Empress hot sauce that you saw. So it's called Yunhai, Yunhai, and they actually have a shop in Brooklyn. So, interesting fact, Taiwanese soy sauce is made with black bean, whereas the majority of soy sauce is made with yellow soybean imported from the US. So, and in fact, the majority of rice consumed is from California, because it's actually the cheapest place in the world to produce the short grain rice that the Japanese like. And the rice that you just saw here is in such limited supply. Like all the Taiwanese rice that gets produced there is eaten domestically. So if you want to make true Taiwanese food, check out Yunhai. Wunhai, and they have a cute shop in Brooklyn. Oh, sorry, WUN, oh. Sorry about that. Why UN? So why am I having problems tonight? Thank you, Eric. YUNHAI.
I would highly suggest buying their pineapple soy sauce. It's not made with pineapple, but it's the remnants of pineapple, so it doesn't taste like pineapple. But taste it side to side with the more traditional and conventional yellow soybean soy sauce. You'll taste a drastic difference. It's like dark brown sugar and white sugar. That's how different they are.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for covering going to Taiwan. My name is Iris, and my family comes from Hong Kong, and I feel a really strong kinship with the identities and the experiences of Taiwan and Hong Kong, and so I really appreciate that you are covering that and allowing the world to see that, even for me too, because I'm not that familiar with Taiwan. Eric, my question is for you, as well as Danielle too, for added perspective. But I think in this current day and age, there seems to be a lot of interest and room for Asian American brands and voices within food to grow. I personally am trying to start, I guess, a distinctly Asian American, not just Asian. And I think, Eric, to your point, like Taiwanese, the idea of this is so malleable and ever changing. And similarly, being Asian American or like Hong Kong American, Cantonese American, it's so individual too. I was wondering if you had any advice for someone who is looking to make their foray into food with a unique but changing kind of perspective within this current day and age.
I think from my experience, I've found the most success when I'm very, very curious and transparent about the curiosity. Because even as a guy who grew up in Taiwan, there's still so much I didn't know. I don't consider myself Taiwanese American. I'm Taiwanese. But even with that, there's still just an entire world that I don't know yet. And I feel like it can be very lonely to try to go onto the battlefield with that mindset. But if you sort of view your potential customers as people who can learn with you, because everybody wants to be educated one way or another, right? I want to educate myself more so I can talk back to the haters. But, I'm not kidding. But I found that people really resonate with knowledge and facts. And when I'm transparent about, I just discovered perhaps this new technique of making scallion pancakes, maybe by one example, I went on this scallion pancake bender for about 3 weeks, where I tried to use all sorts of different fats to make scallion pancakes. The most traditional fat is lard. Nowadays, people use the cheaper option. If they want to use sort of like a laminate or a shortening, it would be Crisco. We still use lard at the restaurant, but I tried using schmaltz, chicken fat. I tried using duck fat. I spent a pretty penny on goose fat, and I used dry-aged beef fat. And I was doing this on Instagram, where I talked about how dry-aged beef fat has tallow has no water after you render it. That's why it solidifies, and also because it's saturated. But I created a roux with vodka, because vodka, it doesn't solidify as quickly. It doesn't absorb into, sorry, I need to reframe. This was a long while ago. But anyways, I made a vodka roux with beef fat, and it worked splendidly in my scallion pancakes. And that very day I posted, 100 people came in to try it. And I think there are small nooks and crannies of community that are very, very curious and willing to go on the journey with you. That's the TLDR.
Hi, thank you for being here tonight. This question is for Ms. Chang. I've got a question regarding, I understand that you're featured on PBS. Would you be interested in, like, say, Apple TV or Netflix or Hulu?
Always open to new opportunities.
Glad to hear that.
Hi, Danielle. It's Michaela.
Hi.
Hey. These 2 episodes were gorgeous. I think all of us went on this beautiful journey with you. Can you share how you and Fran, your filmmaker, find these incredible stories? Because they're really hidden treasures. And thank you again for this.
That's Michaela Malozzi, fellow PBS host, producer, Emmy Award-winning host of Bare Feet with Michaela, who now in its eighth season, and she just went to Taiwan as well. So I can't wait to watch her dance with the Taiwanese. But you know, we were so fortunate to work with Clarissa Wei, the most incredible field producer, who is a Taiwanese American journalist who's currently based in Taiwan. She scouted a lot of these characters for us, and we really wanted to show a culinary but cultural production, not one that was heavily fixated sort of behind the burner and about how to cook. That's something you would do, in which Eric does do very well. We wanted to show the diversity and the dynamism in Taiwan today as it relates to culture, and food was just a really appetizing lens for us to explore that.
And this is a question for Eric. And I love your restaurant, 886. And besides good foods, forget about all those haters. What is your goal for your client going to 886? After they spend the money and enjoy the food, when they work out, how do you want them to feel? And then you'll say, yes, I did it.
Thank you for liking 886. I've asked myself this question a lot before we opened the restaurant. And a lot of it kind of goes back to the feeling I had of being regretful of not really understanding or exploring Taiwanese culture when I was growing up. And the goal I had set in mind was I wanted 886 to be sort of an entry-level ambassador, because food is the easiest way to transport culture, right? Let's say you watch a foreign language movie. That's 2 hours of your time. It can be a gorgeous experience, but it's 2 hours of your time. A song is a whole 3 minutes of your time. Food, you just pop it in your mouth, and then immediately you decide whether you like it or not. And the goal of 886 has been and has always been to introduce Taiwanese food and introduce Taiwan to make people curious about Taiwan. The ultimate success would be if you've never heard about Taiwan, you came to 886, and then we sort of implanted the idea of Taiwan in your mind, Inception style. And then eventually, one of the vacations you take, you go to Taiwan. Then my mission has been accomplished. And that has happened many times. That really has happened. I don't usually boast.
We
but
don't work for the Taiwan Tourism Board either. Yeah. So I think we're gonna take one more question, and then we're gonna chow down.
Hey Daniel, hey Eric, no question for you. I just want to take a minute to appreciate, the moment that you gave us to be together here. I always feel like you, Daniel, for your series, you always bring a fresh eye on, the food industry and also the story behind it. And, it's interesting to see you, you guys were talking about architecture to refer food and culture. And I found it really interesting as an architect. I think, adapt to reuse is always it becomes a trend in this generation. And I feel that's kind of the way that I read about Taiwanese culture and also Taiwanese food, because adaptive use is, you know, taking the existing and to create a new life of that, of a building. And, you know, how I, you know, understand that you are talking about the changing of the food, and when you were talking with the family that make the soybean soy sauce, how that new generation can transform their tradition. And, you know, I found it very, you know, very, very interesting and touched about the conversation and involving of the food. So
Yeah,
thank you for
thank you
that.
so much. I mean, I think Taiwan is amazing because it has so much living culture, you know. We were both born there, but it continues to evolve, and I hope you guys will all come with us, watch the rest of Lucky Chow, eat at 886 in Wenwen, and visit Taiwan with us. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you.